What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Montyverse. We just got back from checking out the Marvels, and boy, Nikki, do we need to talk about this movie because from what we've been told based off of the reviews, this movie is supposed to be pretty divisive.
I feel like that's almost an understatement because from what I've seen from at least the initial reviews, like it's gone up a teeny bit since. It was pretty much in the 50s on Rotten Tomatoes, which is almost as divisive as you can get. And on top of that, like the negative reviews seem to be pretty negative, especially by MCU standards.
Yeah, I was a little shocked reading the first impressions of this film because the people that hated this movie really hated it.
Yeah, I was gonna say like almost like bottom tier MCU.
And it was quite shocking and jarring, so I didn't know what to expect going into this movie. But we're going to give you our quick non-spoiler review, and if we do have to spoil some things here and there, we'll make sure to give you guys a spoiler warning, but we're going to try and keep it as spoiler-friendly as possible. Nikki, what are your thoughts on the Marvels?
It's tough because maybe I just went in with lowered expectations, but I was really pleasantly surprised by this film. Don't get me wrong, there are some very obvious flaws in this movie, but I enjoyed it. I thought the humor worked. I honestly got close to crying numerous times, and honestly, I had such a great time watching it.
Listen, guys, let me tell you something. I love this movie. The love that I have for this movie it shocked even me. I was surprised. I was so confused when it ended because I was like, did I see the same movie as all of these people? Because, listen, this movie is not perfect. It has its flaws, but it's so much fun that I can't see how you can't enjoy it from a film standpoint.
From a film or even an MCU standpoint, because just off the top of my head, I feel like this movie is better than just alone Quantumania, Love and Thunder. I would even probably throw in Multiverse of Madness, personally. So for this to be considered like part of the bottom tier is wild to me because I enjoyed it so much.
The last super divisive film was probably Quantumania, but even with Quantumania, watching it, I could see from a technical aspect, like, okay, I get why people may not like this movie.
Yes, absolutely.
In terms of like the technical and the aesthetic of the film being very computerized. But in terms of this, I'm like, there's a lot to love in this movie.
There's so much, and it hits like, I don't even know where to start if you want to take the reins.
Let's start with the characters because this movie is driven by the titular Marvels.
Yes.
Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, Iman Vellani as the amazing Kamala Khan, and of course, my girl Monica, Teyonah Parris as Monica Rambeau. And boy, what a team do they make. The chemistry of these three leads is electric.
It's fantastic. Firstly, it's perfect because they all are foils to each other, which is especially hard when you have more than two people. But I think they all contrast but complement each other super nicely. Their performances are fire, and the moments that they have with each other feel, for me at least, like they felt very earned. Yes,
I feel like I don't even know how to start with these three because I want to talk about all of them. They're so great. Let's start with Monica because I feel like Monica has the most straightforward story of the three heroes. And I love Teyonah Parris so much.
Yes.
And I love the character of Monica Rambeau so much. She really stole my heart in WandaVision. And just her tragic story that she's been experiencing with her mother and kind of the baggage she's been holding with Carol. I just really love what they did with her in this film.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, because part of going into this movie, there were certain moments I think we kind of predicted and expected to occur. And with her specifically, especially on an emotional level. And there's stuff that still surprised me that they showed with her that I thought was super impactful.
Yes, absolutely. And then, of course, we have the scene stealer, quite possibly the MVP of this movie, Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan. Listen, she's perfect. She's pitch perfect. She's quite possibly the best casting decision in the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She just oozes charisma when she's on screen. She is the living embodiment of any fan of Marvel, whether it's the movies or comics. She is all of us. I turn to you in the theater and I'm like, oh, she's me. She's just me.
She really is you, because what I love is the fact that they incorporate aspects of Ms. Marvel into this film. But I'm just going to say this, and maybe it's a bold statement. I feel like even if you haven't seen the show, which you should, you will still fall in love with her in this film, because she is so true to...
You can't help but fall in love with her.
Yes, because she's so true to the greatness of her character from the show, and it's transitions into the movie so well, and it feels natural, because I feel like that's always a bit of a concern with the movies when you bring together pre-existing characters who came from other works. But she melds in so well, even though she has like such a different tone from Captain Marvel or WandaVision.
Yes, and what was great is they brought the Ms. Marvel aesthetic to this movie. And because you also have the Khan family that joins her, and they're in this a surprisingly large amount, way more than I thought they would be in it. And they are so great. They pick up with that perfect family dynamic they had in Ms. Marvel, and they adapt, and they just carry the through line perfectly in this movie to the point where I'm like, wow, this is great character development. The characters are continuing the character trajectories that they had in Ms. Marvel and expanding upon it in this movie, which is exactly what you want to see in a team-up.
Absolutely. And something that was so fantastic to me is, like you said, their role is larger than I think we expected. And what they do, though, because they do contribute, but it's in ways that feel natural to them. It's not like they force like their involvement. It actually makes sense.
Yeah, it progresses the plot so well, and everything just feels it just keeps the plot moving.
I was gonna say, like, maybe another bold comparison, and maybe not as strong, because that was such a huge part of that movie. It gave shades of Blue Beetle in a way.
Yeah, the family stuff, definitely. It especially when the family gets involved in the action sequences, I definitely was getting Blue Beetle vibes, which is another fantastic movie if people haven't watched it, but we're crossing streams right now.
Yeah.
We can't do that. And finally, we have to talk about Captain Marvel, and I specifically want to talk about Captain Marvel because I feel like I have to go on an apology tour right now, because I did not like the character of Captain Marvel leading into this film. And I'm not saying I don't like Brie Larson. I just don't like what they've done with the character in the movies leading up to this. I feel like we haven't really utilized the character very well. And she was immediately given the Superman problem, and they didn't handle that well either. When they made her super powerful to begin with, but this movie does such an amazing job of making Carol Danvers a human character, like a character with flaws and problems, and they really ground her in a way that they should have done a lot earlier, because I love Captain Marvel now.
I was going to say, and honestly, I read this comment, and I think this might be part of it, because I think we might have to give some credit. We have to give credit to Nia DaCosta, because I saw someone who said that part of it they believe is she was probably directed better as well.
Yeah.
Because I think, like writing aside, I feel like her performance just came through a lot more. Because my biggest issue, I would say, with Captain Marvel, the movie as a whole, is that there were a lot of good intentions, but nothing truly hit. Like, nothing emotional, nothing funny. Like, nothing about that movie was, like, it wasn't bad, it just wasn't impactful to me. This movie was impactful.
Yes. I'm glad you touched on performance, because Nia DaCosta actually gave Brie Larson a performance to give.
Yeah.
Because Brie Larson is a fantastic actress. She is Oscar-winning. She is very talented. And she actually got to show her range in this movie.
Yeah, and like on all levels, on emotional levels, like I said, I almost cried multiple times. On some very comedic levels, stuff I wasn't expecting to happen. So hats off to Brie and Nia.
Yes.
Like, largely.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And a large part of the characterization of Captain Marvel in this movie is doing exactly what I wanted them to do, and viewing Carol through two separate lenses, the lens of Monica and Kamala, and having her address her own flaws through the viewpoints of these two very different perspectives on her.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I was wondering, and I think we we're kind of predicting what would happen. I love the way that they portray them. I don't, because there was a part of us that like could almost spell out what we thought was going to happen, but I think it was still even more nuanced than that, and I really appreciate the movie for that.
Absolutely. The character work in this film is very, very well done.
Yeah.
The plot may be a little here and there, but the character work is fantastic.
Absolutely. Like you said. And like, it almost doesn't need to be said, but shout out to Sam Jackson.
Yeah, he's great.
I mean, no surprise there, but every line delivery, I'm still surprised by how good he is.
Yeah, it's very jarring to see him do this, which is the Nick Fury we all love in this movie, which is Nick Fury is slowly becoming just Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
With every appearance, and I really liked what he did here, but it's definitely very removed from the last time we saw the character, which was in Secret Invasion, and how that was tonally.
I honestly was kind of thinking that too, because like, don't get me wrong, even though it's very divisive and I think the finale wasn't great, I did like a lot about Secret Invasion, but it's wild just the sheer stark contrast between him in that show and him here. Even though I think it made sense from a character perspective, it's crazy.
I do feel like we pick up one plot point from Secret Invasion very loosely.
Yes.
But besides that, there's not really much other reference to that in this movie.
Yeah, but for the purposes of this movie, I think it's fine.
Yeah, his performance fits the tone of this movie, and that works extremely well.
And he's in this movie as much as he needs to be.
Yes. But while the character work is great, probably the one flaw of this film is plot. The plot is a little weak at points, story structure-wise.
Yeah, I'll say this because my biggest issue with the plot is I think some of these scenes are a bit choppy, because this is a shorter than normal MCU film, which I appreciate that they're not drawing it out longer than necessary, but actually could have stood to be a little longer because, like I said, we have some super emotional moments. And I feel like they're kind of like move on a bit too quickly. Yeah. And like you were saying with the plot, also, it takes a bit to get into it. And like, I think it makes perfect sense, but it takes a bit though.
The plot makes sense. I'm talking more structurally, story structure wise, right? Because you did make some, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the villains, but you did talk about like, this would have worked better if it was here.
Yeah.
And so structure wise, that's probably one of the biggest issues I have with this film. And because Nia DaCosta was doing a lot of course correction for mistakes that were made in the past. And one of those mistakes, I think, was having Captain Marvel set in the 90s. And because of that, you have 30 years of time where this character wasn't around. So, but she wants to use Carol and the other two heroes together. And to do that, you have to bring Carol back to present time, right? So we can't. Yeah. So we need to fill in the gaps of that 30 years while also doing this movie. And I think they do that through exposition. Yeah. Which hurts this movie a little bit. Listen, it works for me, but I can understand why people may not like that, because like you have that setup at the end of Captain Marvel 1 and they address that here, but it's all in exposition. Yeah,
absolutely. Because I think the ideas they were presenting were all very sound.
Yes.
But it absolutely could have been portrayed better, and all they really needed was a few more minutes, I think.
Yeah. A few minutes here and there, a scene added here, a scene added there, just to expand on the characters, mainly the villain. And let's talk about the villain, Dar-Benn, played by Mrs. Tom Hiddleston, Zawe Ashton, which is really fun because they both have Marvel projects occurring on the same day.
Literally the same day. That is actually crazy.
Yeah. I'll let you start because you had the biggest, I'll let you start because you definitely had some concerns with Dar-Benn.
Yeah, let me start this. I think she has a very good performance. But I think it doesn't help like going against the powerhouses that are our lead characters. But I think the biggest thing is definitely the writing around her, because I think she had the potential to be a very interesting character, but I don't think it was conveyed as well as it could have been. Now, it's so wild because I feel like part of it, like you said, has to do with story structure. I think if they like portrayed some scenes about her in different orders, that would have immediately maybe not endeared us, but made us more sympathetic to her.
Yeah.
And I think but where we kind of started, it's kind of like you're thrown into her a bit. And I think that really weakens your connection with her.
Yeah, I mean, Dar-Benn I think I've cracked what Dar-Benn's biggest problem is in this movie, and that's she is tonally in a different movie.
Yeah.
Dar-Benn does not fit the tone of this movie. Zawe played, and I don't think it's Zawe's fault, and I don't think it's Nia's fault. I just think wires were crossed somewhere.
Yeah.
Because the performance that she gives is very serious and stoic, and not nearly, she doesn't play into the tone of this film as much as the other three leads do, which works better for them because it's that type of movie.
Yeah. I'll say this. I get to an extent why some of the seriousness was needed because her relation to the leads is mostly with Carol.
Yeah.
And kind of Carol's own development. So I think like to some extent the seriousness is warranted, but you make a great point in that it's a bit jarring at times.
Yeah. And I think I think I can say this without it being a spoiler, but Dar-Benn is essentially used as a manifestation of Carol's past sins, and Monica is like the result of that, and Monica represents the past, and Kamala represents the future, and Dar-Benn is like all of Carol's past mistakes looking her in the face.
Right, absolutely. Which again, I think is a very interesting concept that they could have gone with. Like, do you know what had just occurred to me?
Yes, go ahead. No, I don't. Tell me.
But like, imagine like for example in Spider-Man: Homecoming, if the opening scene was placed in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
How much worse would Adrian Toomes have been? And that's kind of how I feel about Dar-Benn.
Yeah, we needed one really long scene of Dar-Benn. When you guys watch the movie, you will know what scene we're talking about. But there's a scene in this movie that's kind of in the beginning of the third act, actually, which probably should have been the cold open of this film.
Yeah, because the actual cold open, it's not, again, I wouldn't say anything is like egregiously bad. I just think it would have been more effective to do this a bit differently.
Yeah, that way you could have your very serious, very like aggressive scene in the beginning of the film, and then everything could be fun and the same exact tone after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just real quick, because I think you're a little bit higher than I am. I have a couple other issues real quick.
Go for it.
I do think while a lot of the movie looks gorgeous, I noticed a few CGI issues, mostly when people were flying. That like there's especially a scene with one of the leads where she's flying and then lands, and to me I saw like the shift very blatantly.
I don't know. I thought it was really good. I thought the CGI was actually pretty good, especially a lot of the space stuff.
The space stuff and a lot of the scenic design is gorgeous. And they go to numerous locations. I think all of those look almost perfect.
Yes, the set design and the world building in this film was really great. There's a lot of fun places that we visit, a lot of new places that we visit, and a lot of old places with different appearances that we visit. So I really like the way they built the worlds that they chose.
Absolutely that. And I don't think we can end this review like no spoilers. There's some wacky stuff in this movie.
Yeah.
Like stuff that I think it's not good or bad. It's very much your mileage may vary.
Absolutely. And we both looked at each other. We both loved it. There's a lot of fun, but you have to give in to the bit, like moments in this movie. And if you do, you will have a fun time with this movie. But if you go in looking to fight this movie, you will not like that stuff, and it will rub people the wrong way.
Yeah, which, to be fair, I think is totally fine, because I think some of this stuff is subjective and to people's taste. And if it's not their taste, that's totally fine. But thankfully, it was up both of our alleys.
It was right on my alley. I love a good meme. But with that being said, Nikki, out of 5, do we want to do Flurkins?
We have to do Flurkins.
Okay, out of 5 Flurkins, what do you rate The Marvels?
I give this, it's tough because, like I said, there's flaws, and I'm not going to claim it's perfect, but I enjoyed it, and there's so many strong elements. I'm going to give it 3.5 Flurkins.
Oh no, you just cut a Flurkin in half.
I mean, maybe they can regenerate.
They listen, they're pretty crazy. They can do anything. We'll figure it out. That's a pretty great score. I really love this movie. This is a super fun movie that I can find myself watching over and over again and still enjoying it. Yeah. So because of that, and because, I love the character work in this film, I'm going to give this 4 Flurkins out of 5 Flurkins. I really enjoy. I don't know what to say. I love this movie. It is my perfect movie. It is a superhero movie. It is a meme. It's everything, and that's what I love. So
I was gonna say, you also saved the Flurkin. It's not in half anymore.
Exactly. But yeah, we highly recommend seeing The Marvels. You guys should check it out just to form your own opinion. And if you like fun superhero movies, this is definitely a film worth checking out. If you guys liked the video, make sure to give it a huge thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest content. If you want to check out our other reviews and reactions, click the link on the page. Until next time, guys, stay versed.